Boston College and Syracuse are two Northeast teams with new head coaches, and both have high expectations moving forward. On today's show, I'm going to explain to you why the Eagles have a brighter future than the Syracuse Orange.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day, and I'm your host, AJ Black, editor and publisher of Eagle Insider, part of the 247 Network. Check out all my work over there. On today's show, I'm going to dive in between the Syracuse Orange and the Boston College Eagles, two teams, as I said earlier, with new head coaches. I'm going to look into what each team is kind of set up like and why I think Boston College is more set up to be a better program moving forward. And then I'm going to throw in a few mild crystal balls of players I think could end up with the Eagles this weekend after official visit weekend. But today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Make sure you check out Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So this winter was an active winter for both the Syracuse Orange and the Boston College Eagles. First off, Dino Babers, who I thought was a very good coach at Syracuse. I know he's had some rough spots here and there. He gets fired. They move on and they hire Fran Brown. Fran Brown gets a lot of accolades because he was the National Recruiter of the Year for the Georgia Bulldogs, who are a very different situation than the Syracuse Orange. And there was some momentum. You started to see them, the Orange, get some big recruiting wins. They're starting to make some moves. They bring in Kyle McCord from Ohio State. They brought in a great wide receiver from Colorado State. There's a lot of, they bring in another great recruiter in Elijah Robinson, who's their defensive coordinator now. Orange feeling good. And we're going into the offseason for BC, still feeling pretty good as well, as Jeff Hafley had just beaten SMU, a top 25 team in the Fenway Bowl. But then things change for Boston College. Boston College loses Jeff Hafley to the NFL. He becomes defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers. They make a hire, and it's the biggest hire, I think, for Boston College football in a long time, like long time. One of the biggest ones they've ever made, with experienced NFL and college head coach Bill O'Brien. Now, when you look at the differences between O'Brien and Brown, it couldn't be more stark. You have Fran Brown, who is a great recruiter. I'm not knocking him for his recruiting. He can recruit. But he's he's the National Recruiter of the Year. He did it for the Georgia Bulldogs, who I'm pretty sure I could become the defensive line coach or a defensive backs coach or whatever and recruit for Georgia. They're two-time national champions. They have, one of the best head coaches in college football history in Kirby Smart. The program sells itself. Syracuse is a tougher sell. And to his credit, he's done a good job of boosting back up the Syracuse recruiting pool. He's done what he's set out to do. But there's a big thing about Fran Brown that I'm skeptical about. He's never been a head coach. I don't believe he's even been a coordinator before. He's been a position coach. That's a step back from even what Jeff Hafley had been. We watched Jeff Hafley learn on the job for 4 years. There were moments where he didn't seem like he knew how to build a roster, what the needs of his program were. Some situational things, especially on the offensive side of the ball. There were times where he had to learn because he hadn't been a head coach before. And that's just natural. Like Fran Brown, no, I'm not knocking the guy. He's just not been a head coach before. And that is a serious disadvantage when you're going up against Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien has not only been a head coach, but he's been in positions where he's had to build up a program from from the ground up. Remember, he stepped in at Penn State when Penn State was decimated with sanctions and all that because of the Jerry Sandusky and the Jerry Sandusky scandal. And he made them a bowl team. He made them very good and parlayed that into an NFL career where he took a Houston Texans team that was also bad and made them a perennial playoff team. So he has the experience to do what he needs to do at BC. Fran Brown has no experience doing any of that. That's just the facts. You can't look at Fran Brown and tell me that he's done what Bill O'Brien has done. Now, he could. And what I'm going to say here is I'm expecting him to have probably a good year this year because Syracuse is playing a god-awful schedule and not playing anybody. I think they're one of the few teams that aren't playing a Power 5 program on an out-of-conference schedule. I think their toughest out-of-conference game is UNLV. So they're going to win 4 games right there. They're not going to be a bad team. What I'm saying is, as it gets tougher, when Syracuse, they're going to probably puff their chest and say, we won 8 or 9 games this year, whatever. When they play a tougher schedule moving forward, and believe me, they will, that's when the pavement hits the road, where rubber hits the road. I think Bill O'Brien going into this year is battle tested. He knows what he's getting into. He's done it all before. He's seen every situation you could possibly imagine, and he's not going to have to learn on the job. He has a tougher schedule this year. So I'm going to say right now, this year I'm pretty much expecting Syracuse to have a better record than BC. If BC was playing the schedule they had last year, I'd have a different argument about that, because if we played the 2024-3 schedule, Bill O'Brien would be winning 8 or 9 games. Easy, potentially 10, because he's a better coach than Jeff Hafley is. And I think he wouldn't have had the oopsies that Hafley had. This is going to be where BC owns Syracuse. They have experienced head coaches. They have on their staff, whether it's Doug Marrone or Rob Chudzinski, or even like experienced coordinators. You know, Syracuse is bringing in Elijah Robinson, who is an excellent recruiter, but he's only been a positional coach, and he has a high future, and he could be good. But again, I'm telling you what we have in front of you right now. Tim Lewis has been doing this for years. He knows what he's doing. This experience, it matters in college football. Learning on the job and figuring things out is going to cost Syracuse games. I'm telling you right now. They have a bunch of guys with bright futures, but they're going to cost them games. And I'm not sure how high their ceiling can be, because we just saw what Jeff Hafley did. Remember, Jeff Hafley, he was a nice guy, and he won some nice games, but some of the game management and roster management limited what he could do. And I expect kind of the same stuff from Fran Brown. I think that's what's going to happen with Syracuse. Now, in a moment, I want to look at the other part of Syracuse that I think is also an issue that I think BC can actually really pounce on and show why the Orange are below BC. And I'll explain all that in just a moment. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. Look, if you're a Red Sox fan or a Yankees fan, you know that going to those games are going to be expensive. Why spend more than you need to? Why by getting tickets from some other guy, when you go to Gametime, and you're going to get good prices, and it's always going to be competitive. With Fenway Park as well, there's seats that are good. There's some seats that aren't so good. With their ticket viewer, where you can see your seats, you're going to get a panoramic view from your seat. So if you're going to be looking at the Green Monster or behind a pole, it's going to show you exactly. That's why I love Gametime. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. This is Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black, and we're talking about Boston College versus Syracuse, and not the game. I'm talking about the programs themselves. And I wanted to look at another piece that I think is what gets the smoke for Fran Brown. This is what gets him all the attention, and it's his recruiting chops. As I said earlier, he was the National Recruiter of the Year by 247 for his work at Georgia. He now has to go to Syracuse, a school that does not have the reputation that Georgia has, that does not have the resources that Georgia has, it does not have the history that Georgia has. It's a very, very different beast. And so he's making his recruiting pitches. And this is kind of a thing of mine that I look at and I say to myself, okay, there's probably stuff that they're talking about behind doors that is a little deeper. But when I see the pictures and the differences between the photo shoots between BC and Syracuse, it shows me why Boston College probably just stole Syracuse's top recruit. We talked about this 2 episodes ago. Marcus Upton, who is decommitting from Syracuse and is taking an official visit this weekend. He was their top-rated recruit, and I think what we're going to talk about could be a big reason part of it. Now, look at this picture if you're on YouTube. If you're not, I'm going to describe it. It's a recruit standing in front of a bunch of cars at the Carrier Dome, or whatever they call it now. I don't get this. And I'm not a kid, so I maybe they have more to it than I think of. But when I'm selling a product, if say I'm selling my school, showing off a bunch of flashy cars is about as superficial as you can get when it comes to recruiting. And believe me, don't get in my comment sections and tell me that, yes, that's going to get some recruits. I get that. I'm telling you overall big picture. When you're selling cars with the orange on it, and you have them running through balloons and all sorts of stuff like that, to me, that all seems incredibly superficial. And yes, you're going to get 16-year-olds to pay attention to that at times, but kids that have their heads on straight a lot more often, or kids that are looking big picture, are going to look past that. Boston College is selling a few different things. First of all, they're selling an opportunity to get to the NFL. You look at the coaching staff at Boston College, and it is loaded with NFL experience, whether it's Tim Lewis, who worked for the Giants and the Steelers and all that stuff, Bill O'Brien, who worked with Tom Brady, who worked with Deshaun Watson, who has experience up and down different positions in the NFL. You have Rob Chudzinski, former NFL head coach, Doug Marrone, former NFL head coach. You have a ton of NFL experience with this, and kids hear that. I talk to the recruits as part of my job for 247. I talk to the recruits, and I hear about that. That should be one piece that BC can sell, and I think that they have a much deeper experience there than Syracuse does. Okay, Syracuse, Fran Brown, he has been a positional college coach. That's it. And now their offensive coordinator, he worked for the Giants, so they do have some. I'm just saying, I think BC has more. Then there is the city. You can sell Boston. You're in Boston for most of parts of the campus, and many of the apartments are in Boston. Don't tell me that Boston is not better than Syracuse. Boston is an infinitely better city, nightlife, all that than Syracuse. And professionally, if they're selling it too, that there's networks. If like these kids, many of them understand that, they want to go to the NFL, but if they don't, this will be setting you up. There's a better network in the city of Boston than in the city of Syracuse. Another easy sell. Boston College can also sell their academics, right? That's what we hear from all the kids. And they're getting better and better. You get engineering programs now. You've got, the School of Business, the School of Education, the School of Science. They've got a lot more, and it's a higher ranked school than Syracuse. So there's deeper things that Boston College can sell. And they go for, a holistic approach in their recruitment too, right? You hear about it from the kids. Like Bill O'Brien is selling, we're going to make you a full, like a complete man. Like we're going to do, this, you're going to get NIL money, but you're also going to do some community service work and give back to your community. You're going to get the right kids and it's going to start to pay off. Now, the big difference right now is Syracuse, they're selling whatever they're selling and they've landed a few, but BC again stole their top commit or is about to steal their top commit according to Brian Doan's crystal ball. In my crystal ball, I just put it in last night. I think once the play starts on the field, once you see the differences in the coaching abilities of Bill O'Brien versus Fran Brown, that's what's going to make the difference too. So you have a deeper recruiting pitch for Boston College that should be able to outsell Syracuse guys standing in front of cars. You have a coaching staff that should be able to, once they play, and it'll probably be a year or two because I'm sure Syracuse is going to get a bump after they beat the snot out of their terrible schedule they're playing this year. You're going to get the on-field advantage as well. So I think the future for Boston College, based off of what I expect on the field and what I expect will eventually start to turn around on the recruiting trail, is better for the Eagles, and it's going to make them a better program than the Syracuse Orange. I think Bill O'Brien is the perfect hire for Boston College, and we're seeing it more and more with flipping a commitment from Utah to potentially stealing Syracuse's top recruit. He's already made a bunch of moves in his first 3 months that have shown me that he's got Boston College going in the right trail. This is no longer a learning on the job coach. This is a coach that has everything in place. I've been to practices. I've watched. This guy is like a drill sergeant out there. As he said earlier this summer, no players were late for practice for me. He's not their buddy like Hafley was. He is a tougher coach, and he's going to drill discipline. He's going to drill, getting things right, the fundamentals. I think he's going to end up putting BC and getting more and maximizing more out of his roster than Fran Brown will. I see as well all this talk about Kyle McCord. I saw Locked On ACC talking about Kyle McCord potentially being ACC Player of the Year. Pump the brakes, okay? Kyle McCord last year was playing for Ohio State. He was throwing to Marvin Harrison Jr. and Amuzi and Awuka, I think his name was. Amazing offensive weapons. He's not getting that at Syracuse. He's got a good wide receiver. As I said earlier, the Colorado State kid. But Mitch Wolf, he's going to do a whole scouting report on him. He's not the game changer that a lot of folks think he is. So the difference between McCord and Thomas Castellanos isn't as big as few people think. And the talk about him through this whole season being an ACC Player of the Year, I think that's putting the cart way before the horse. Let's see what he does in that schedule. Okay. So again, Orange, they're going to have a good year. I'm sure they're going to have a good year because they're playing nobody. When I compare Fran Brown and Bill O'Brien, the answer is clear. Boston College is going to be a better team in a couple of years. And I feel strongly about that. Now, in our final segment, I want to talk about official visit season as Boston College is set to invite their last group of official visitors. I'll explain a few names who aren't coming, and I'll give a few crystal balls that you're going to want to know about on our final segment. This is Locked On BC. I'm your host, AJ Black. And as I said, we're talking recruiting now. Okay, we're switching the gears. I'm done with rambling about Syracuse. As I said earlier this week, I'm only supposed to be doing, I'm allowed to do 3 days a week, but I'm so amped up this week because of recruiting, the Syracuse stuff. I had to talk about it all. And so I did 5 episodes. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Now, finally, 4th official visit weekend, they've had about 50 official visitors come to BC, and they've landed quite a bit as their official visit commitment list is up to about 18 right now with a bunch of silent commitments that we're still waiting for. But this weekend, there could be some more big news. Now, I have not placed any official crystal balls, but this is where I'm kind of thinking. This weekend, there's a couple names that are coming on campus. Kowal is one that I love, as I said on the previous episode. Is a late rising offensive tackle out of Ohio. He just took an official visit to Purdue. Now, BC has one commitment on the offensive line. Now, I think I expect there's more. I'm just going to tease that right now that have, behind the scenes. But I think Qual could be a strong candidate. I'm not putting a crystal ball in for him yet. Now, Purdue just landed Cameron Gorin, offensive lineman who was supposed to be at BC. Cameron Herron, excuse me. And I'm wondering if Qual will be the next one. I feel good about this one. I feel like he could be a name that I would put as a strong BC lean. Next, Ja'Cory Watson. This is a name that I've been talking about for 3 months now. The biggest wide receiver offer I think BC has made is Ja'Cory Watson, who's taken official visits to Baylor, Houston, and Boston College. He is from the state of Texas. I love wide receivers from the state of Texas. It's, that high school football down there is a whole other ball game. Texas is connected to BC through Darryl Wyatt, their wide receivers coach, who opens doors. When I see a guy like Watson, who has not committed yet, still coming down to Boston College, that means to me that this visit means a lot to him. Like, he could have committed already. There's other guys that, didn't even make their trip because they wanted someplace else. Watson has checked out other programs, has not checked out BC yet. I feel Darryl Wyatt, the wide receivers coach, he kind of moves in silence. So you don't get to know what's actually going on in the wide receivers room because he doesn't really talk to, he does his own thing. But I get the sense that Watson must be really connected to him. I feel like that's going to be the case. So I feel like this could be one to watch for this weekend. Obviously, he's got some other big offers, but if he's already gone through all of them and still wanted to get to BC, he's looking for something. And if he sees it at BC, maybe he'll be one of those guys that pops this weekend. So those are the two that I'm watching for. Now, other names that I am also waiting to hear on from previous weekends. I think there's still going to be a tight end that commits. We already have Bryce Lewis, the son of Tim Lewis, the defensive coordinator. He's already committed. BC's taking 2 tight ends. So it's either going to be one of 2 guys, if they're going to get him, and maybe they'll go for a flyer later on. It's Stevie Amar out of California and Derek Johnson out of Louisiana. They were both on campus last weekend. Now, Amar is at BYU this weekend. That's a good, decent pull. BYU, just like BC, has some things that make it a little tougher to get them there. While Derek Johnson's at Tulane, which is his backyard. I would love to see Amar here. I think he would be a really nice get for BC. But he's been at Arizona State, California, BC. He's had a lot of offers. But he's someone I'm watching for. Maybe BC can pull him in. But that's another position that I'm still waiting for. And then there's the edge rushers. There's been a bunch of edge rushers that have been on campus. We've not seen one pop other than Israel Oladipo. I think there could be some news coming up with that hopefully soon. So we'll have to check out on that. Now, I will be back again on Monday. We'll have the whole fallout of this weekend, whether there's commitments, whether there's news that we didn't expect, anything. It's going to be here on Locked On BC. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, give us a 5-star review on wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you're on YouTube, smash that subscribe button and the bell to know when Locked On BC is going live. We did this 5 days this week. Hope you enjoyed every single episode. If you missed any, go back and check them out. I appreciate all of you who have subscribed, all of you who have sent me comments on Twitter. I love y'all. This is AJ Black. I'll be back again on Monday for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.